Welcome to Secret Story. My wife, Lynn, used to be as well, but over the past few years she has become less, how can I say, adventurous. Our life now exists of wham bam thank you ma'am, which really does little for me. If I lived in a city I would be likely out in the bars looking for someone with whom to relieve some of my frustration, but since I live in a small town, hours away from the nearest city, the possibilities are severely limited. That leaves the internet. That I was actually quite surprised how many women are out there who are as horny as I am and are willing to share their desires. It was unexpected that they would tell me about their fantasies while chatting online, but I was amazed that some would play with themselves while doing it. I was really thrilled when some of these women had cameras and would show themselves playing online. Wow, not being shy myself, I too got a camera and had a lot of fun sharing my playtime with some of these women. Having the camera was something I had to keep hidden from my wife though. I could not come up with a good excuse for having it, so I kept it secreted away and only brought it out when my wife was out of the house. Having this secret camera is the reason I got to see something I never thought I would. Lynn and I generally argue about little things, including who is doing more around the house. Her work is only part-time, so I get upset when I come home from work and find the house a mess when she has been home all day. She tells me that she is busy during the day, but I see little evidence of it. I decided to give myself an edge in our argument about what was going on at home. That I had seen advertisements on the internet about software that let you watch your house when you weren't home. I think it was meant for security, or to monitor your kids or something, but I thought that I could use it to see for myself what Lynn did at home when I was at work. I assumed I would see her sitting around watching soaps all day, chatting on the phone or whatever. Getting up early one morning, I hid the camera inside a vase that was on top of the entertainment center in the living room. Running the cable through the maze of wires that connected to the TV and stereo. I tucked it through the vent that was common to the living room and the study. That I turned on the computer, connected the camera and saw that it gave a very good view of the living room. After downloading the software, I hid the icon for it, and left the computer on. I was all set up now to gather evidence that Lynn sat around and did nothing all day, and I left for work. Arriving at my office, I closed the door, sat at the computer, and typed in the web address that came with the spy software. I followed the simple instructions and within a couple of minutes I was connected and in control of the computer at home. Very cool. I activated camera view and on my screen saw my living room. This was great. The house seemed to be quiet. Lynn must still be in bed. I decided to give her a call and get her up. If I had to be at work all day, at least she could be awake. Lynn answered the phone groggily, sleep coming through in her voice. Hi. I said, still sleeping? Yeah. Oh, sorry for waking you up, I lied. I just wanted to ask you to get some shaving cream for me when you go shopping today. Okay, I will. What time will you be home today? Oh, regular time I suppose. Why? Oh, no reason, wondering what time to make supper is all. Okay. I'll let you go then. Okay. Bye. Bye. The phone went dead and I imagined I would see Lynn on the screen in a couple of minutes since she was awake now and the trip to the washroom she would likely have to make would take her right through the living room. That I didn't have to wait long before I saw her at the far end of the room coming through the door. Still in her nightgown she stepped quickly through the room and then disappeared through the bathroom doorway. My work is quite technical, and my boss lets me pretty much run with it. He hardly ever comes to my office and asks what I am working on, he just emails assignments to me and leaves me alone. I will on occasion leave my door closed while I am working so I can concentrate, so I was pretty confident I could watch Lynn while at work and no one would be the wiser. Besides, I figured, I would just be checking every few minutes to confirm she was sitting on the sofa watching TV or whatever. I would still be able to work. While Lynn was in the washroom, I started on my first task at work while keeping the camera view open in a small window on my screen. I was working my way through a problem when I saw Lynn come out of the bathroom and park her on the sofa. Aha! Just as I expected, this was cool. I felt kinda mischievous watching Lynn while she was oblivious to me seeing her sitting there. Surprisingly, she only sat for a few moments then proceeded into the study. I lost sight of her as she stepped through the doorway. What is she doing now? I wondered. Probably on the computer. I thought that it was a good thing I had put the camera on hide mode. I realized something else as well. If she was going to be on the computer, I could see what she was doing. The software I had downloaded allowed me to secretly view the host computer screen. Cool. I looked into the help file of the spy software to figure how to see the screen at home. I carefully followed the directions and soon had Lynn's screen open in a window on my desktop. Man, this was so cool. I should be a private eye or something, I told myself. Soon I realized though that I had not been much of an investigator. While I watched Lynn's screen on the computer, I saw something that caught me completely off guard. Lynn opened the Yahoo chat site. That is the site that I always went to when I was looking to fool around online. I realized that there were many chat rooms in Yahoo, and I'm sure some would be of interest to Lynn. Not all the sites were adult-oriented. Surely it would be a movies or crafts site that Lynn would be coming here for, I rationalized. I soon found out that was not the case, however. Immediately after she logged in, she went to the married and looking site. What? That is where I always went. Had she seen my internet history? Did she know my login name? Did she find out that I was going here and was trying to find someone who knew me? I found that my fears of her trying to catch me fooling around were soon put to rest when I noticed her login name. It was 1456_wet_princess. What? Was she actually in Yahoo playing like I do? No, that didn't make sense. Sensible or not though, it was soon obvious she was doing just that. Directly after she entered the married but looking chat room, she said about searching out men with cameras and asking to view. With a login name like wet_princess, most men immediately opened their camera to her. She soon had 4 cameras opened up for her. The men were in various. I was stunned. Lynn, who had been so disinterested lately, was now openly watching these men. I found many women that liked to share their play on camera with me. Was it possible Lynn would do that too? Lynn opened a chat window to one of the guys who was PLA. Would you? Yes please. No way. Lynn was loving this. I couldn't believe it. Another chat window opened as someone sent Lynn an instant message. Hi Lynn. How's my sweetie today? Jason. Great, yours? Who the hell was Jason, and why was he calling Lynn sweetie? So far so good, I've got today off. Do you? She asked. Yep. Whatcha doing? Oh, you know, watching. She typed. Working. Cindy must be Jason's wife. She knows this guy's wife's name. How long had they been chatting and whatever else on here? So is Brent. Is he? Yep, but I'm home all day all alone. Hang on, I'm gonna phone you. Okay. The typing in the chat window stopped and the mouse was stationary on the screen. It seemed that this Jason guy was what or who she was looking for in the chat room. My head was spinning. Here I thought my wife was just being lazy. And now she was going to be on the phone with some guy from the internet. In my camera view I now saw Lynn move from the study to the living room and pick up the phone. I had to assume it was Jason. She smiled as she talked and I could see her laugh as well. She appeared to really enjoy talking to this Jason guy. I was starting to get a bit more jealous and wished I knew what the conversation was about. They only talked for a couple of minutes before Lynn put down the phone, looked at her watch and hurried out of the room. I never even considered the work I was supposed to be doing. I was stunned by what I had seen over the last few minutes. My wife was around on the internet, talking to them on the phone. I was tempted to go home right now and confront her about it, but really didn't know what to say. Actually I was a bit interested in the fact that Lynn liked to watch men. I had always dreamed of a bit of a swinger's lifestyle, and if Lynn was into other men then maybe, I started to think about it. Would she want to? I considered that for a minute and realized that if I desired other women, why wouldn't she desire other men? As I sat there pondering the possibilities, Lynn re-entered the living room. She was still in her nightgown, but I could see that she had taken a shower because her hair was still wet as she sat down on the sofa. She sat there brushing her hair quietly for a few minutes, then suddenly she jumped up, peeked out the curtains and then hurried out of the room. Someone was at the door, I guessed. Lynn disappeared from view for a few minutes and then reappeared, and someone was with her. Oh. I realized. That Jason. Now I knew what Jason and Cindy. We had played baseball together last summer. They lived in the same town, but we never socialized, or at least we never all socialized. It was apparent that Jason and Lynn were quite more than social. If he was with Lynn, with me being away at work, and her greeting him in her nightgown, it could only mean one thing. They were having an affair. All manner of things ran through my head now. How long had this been going on? I was really at a loss what to think or do. I was sure of one thing though. I was going to watch and find out exactly what was happening. It didn't take long to find that out. Lynn, still in her nightgown, sat down on the sofa and Jason sat beside her. She turned to him, quickly getting up. I went down the hall to tell my boss that I was going to have to go home for the rest of the day. I didn't want him looking for me. I then went back into my office, locked the door behind me, then sat down to see exactly what was going to happen. Although it was pretty obvious where it was heading, I had just been lucky how I had set the camera up. Lynn and Jason were in perfect view. I wondered if they ever considered that I would find out about them. I'm sure they never thought I would be sitting in my office watching them on my computer. This was incredible. I thought. I should have set up a mic too. I had fortunately spent the extra $50 and bought a high-quality camera. Lynn now stood up and turning toward me, or the camera. I was surprised to find myself not mad or jealous. I was, in fact, still aroused. I wonder what that would taste like, I thought as I started to consider how I could bring up the subject to Lynn. Welcome to Secret Story. Shelley is quietly laying in bed playing games on her phone beside Randy, her sleeping husband. Suddenly the phone buzzed in her hand. She hadn't been expecting anyone to text her at this time of night, but when it happened she knew immediately who it was. She quickly shifted her eyes to look at Randy and reflexively put her phone down beside her, afraid that he had heard it. It appeared that Randy was still sleeping beside her as she sat propped up in their bed. He hadn't stirred, yet she listened to his breathing and watched him for a few seconds to make sure he was still asleep. The soft light of the lamp on her bedside table gave her enough light to see that his face showed he was fully asleep. Shelley had been mindlessly playing Angry Birds and listening to music through an earpiece from her iPhone as her husband lightly snored beside her. She turned to her phone and saw that there was one new message. She opened the message app, and saw it was from Brittany, as she expected. She had set up Brent's contact name as Brittany, just in case. Hi. You're awake. Her heart fluttered. Contact with Brent did that to her, it excited her always. It was like being a teenager again. She texted back, yes, but I'm in bed, Randy is sleeping. Did you wear him out? Right. He came to bed and was out in 5 minutes. Aw, no fun for you tonight? Like any other night. I don't know how he can keep his hands off of you. Her heart skipped. Over the last few months there had been 3 times that she and Brent had been able to sneak away for a few hours. Brent certainly had been very attentive. He was attentive to her, her needs, her body. He seemed to be completely enthralled with her. It was gratifying, flattering to be the center of someone's world even if for a few hours every once in a while. He seems to have no trouble keeping his hands to himself, she texts back. His loss, unfortunately yours too. Yeah, it has been way too long since I've, you know. Nope. Don't know. You'll have to tell me, he teased her. Yeah, right. You know full well what I mean. Nope. I'm completely unaware, tell me. Shelley smirked to herself. She liked it when he played with her, as she enjoyed all of the little games that they played. I'm sure you can figure it out, she texts back. It has to do with Randy not wanting any intimacy, and me not having the privacy to be intimate by myself. Shelley flushed at the thought of Brent playing with himself. OMG, really? Yes. I'm out of town for work in a hotel, all alone. Now that I hear your voice I'm so turned on, she texts back, okay. That isn't fair. I told you that I haven't in so long and now you're teasing me. Haven't what? Oh, is that what you meant? He texted. Yes, you knew full well what I meant. I just wanted to be sure. Yes, and chatting with you isn't helping. She texted. Shelley paused looking at the screen then turned to look at Randy. He was still snoring laying on his back beside her. She'd love to right now, with Brent, but how? What do you mean? She sent. Where is the earpiece that came with your phone? I'm listening to music with it. Why? Because if you really want to see we could FaceTime. Shelley again looked at Randy. He was still zonked out. We can't, she sent. If you use the earpiece the phone won't make any sound. Well, there was one thing she wanted more. But what if Randy heard or saw? If I get up to go to another room Randy will wake up, he always does when I get up at night. I guess you'll just have to be quiet. He sent. I just can't. Randy is wry. Shelley was typing into the phone when it buzzed in her hand. Shelley was on edge and the phone buzz made her jump. Brittany FaceTime request was displayed on the screen. Shelley turned to Randy in wide-eyed nervousness. He made some noise and turned to his side, facing away from Shelley. She was torn between receiving the request or not. What if she was caught? She pressed accept. The music that she had been listening to was muted and she heard in her earpiece Brent's voice. Hi gorgeous. I know you can't talk. I can see you a little bit. It is pretty dark there. Can you hear me? If you can just nod. Shelley looked at her phone. Although it was quite dark in her bedroom. Brent's hotel was apparently quite well lit as she could see him clearly. He was obviously on the bed in his hotel room. She could see the typical hotel room furnishings behind him. She nodded slowly and smiled back at him. Good, he said, you are so gorgeous. I know you have to stay quiet, so I'll do the talking, okay? Shelley nodded and slid down from her propped position on the bed. She could not believe she was going through with this. Do you really want to? She nods. Do you really want to see me? She nods again. It feels good, doesn't it, Shelley? Shelley opens her eyes again and looks to the phone and nods. She stifles it as best she can but knows she was louder than she expected. As she listens to her husband's breath beside her, she watches her phone inches from her face. Again Shelley cannot suppress, "Sure sweetheart. You'll wake up Randy," he reprimands her. He is still asleep. She nods in response. Okay, be careful. Too bad you can't be loud like me, he tells her. She opens her eyes wide into the camera and nods her head strongly in jerky, almost erratic motions. She is only beginning to catch her breath when she is aware that Randy is moving beside her. In a panic she turns the phone over, screen down, and tries to lay as still as she can. She feels him rise up to look over her shoulder. He places his hand on her shoulder and speaks quietly to her. Shelley. Shelley. Wake up, you're having a dream. Shelley murmurs, pretending to be waking from sleep. What? Are you okay? Randy asks. You were thrashing about and making all kinds of noise. Yeah, I'm fine, she answers. Well, you're all hot and sweaty. It must have been a pretty nasty dream. Then from the earpiece in her ear, more like you were nasty and the dream was hot and sweaty. Good night.